So let me preface this video by saying that the video comes from a website called theringoffire.com, a self-proclaimed progressive news site, so I didn't really expect to come across anything but left-wing bullshit. That said, this is the first video of my channel, so I thought what better way to kick things off than picking some low-hanging fruit. Let's begin.
There are a lot of people in this country right now, both Trump supporters and those who voted against him, who still want to tell us that racism and sexism did not put Trump into office.
Well, considering the majority of states that turned Republican voted in a black guy, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
It was a myriad of factors, everything from economic anxiety to fear about immigration and Muslim terrorism to just flat out Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate and that's why Trump won.
You seem to forget the part where all of these are valid. There is economic anxiety, there is fear about immigration, there is fear about Muslim terrorism, and Hillary was a bad candidate. I hate to break it to you, but if the people who voted Trump are saying all of these things, then perhaps it may be true.
Now, granted, all of those things played a role in Trump's victory, but you cannot deny the role that racism and sexism played, not only to give Trump the White House, but to elevate him during the primaries.
You know what? I actually agree. Racism did play a role in Trump's victory. Sexism too. Racism from the traditional media outlets who condescendingly told the public that white people were wrong if they voted Trump. Sexism from the progressives saying that it's okay to belittle masculinity because they believe it is a problem with the world. If you progressives are pondering why a straight white man beat Hillary Clinton to the White House, then look in the mirror because it's on you.
And before you get mad at me and say that I'm wrong, guess what? That's not my opinion.
Then what is your opinion? Do you think differently to this, and if so, why are you doing this, you fucking sellout?
That's the results from yet another study, this time out of the University of Massachusetts School of Political Science, where they looked at polls, they looked at voter attitudes, they looked at voter statements, they interviewed people, and they came to the conclusion that Donald Trump won the White House mostly, not all, mostly because of racism and sexism in the United States.
Well, it's funny because upon looking at the study and its authors, it seems that most, if not all of them, are also social science graduates of some sort. And social science progressives have a tendency to manipulate and ignore data depending on if it clashes with their ideology. I'll link the study in the description.
Now, before you go thinking that every Donald Trump voter is some guy out there in a white hood burning crosses in people's front yards, that's not what these researchers were looking at.
Sorry, mate. You mustn't have got your invite to the last white male privilege and patriarchal norms meeting. We nixed the whole burning crosses and white hoods thing. Now we just wear plain clothes and make YouTube videos.
They asked specific questions and looked at the answers and were able to extrapolate data from that. Questions such as, do you feel that racism is a problem in society?
Well, I guess that depends on which society. A small farm town comprised of mostly white people may not have an issue with racism because its diversity is low to none. You can't do what progressives hypocritically do to others and paint everyone with the same brush.
If you say no, that gets counted, because it is, as a partially racist belief.
Okay, first off, how is this racist? Not seeing there is a problem does not mean you are part of the problem. I think these researchers have baked some serious ideological groupthink into their methodology. Despite it being subjective as fuck, they are literally thought-shaming people who do not see issues with race in their society. Second, how can you be partially racist? I've never heard someone say partial sexist. You're either a woman-hating oppressive shitlord or you're not. Third, listen to the absolute righteousness this guy has as he affirms this is absolutely true. You sure this isn't your opinion, mate?
Racism obviously is a problem in society. To say that it's not shows that you have some kind of negative attitude towards people who talk about it.
Listen, moron, to say there's obviously racism in society shows the level of care you take before you mindlessly spout other people's bullshit. Through your progressivist lens, you only see society as a collective, which allows you to judge other people without looking at the smaller societies in your country. Newsflash. Race isn't the only thing that can have different cultures, you bigoted prick. Oh, and I didn't call you a moron because I'm an ableist cunt. I said it because you're a moron.
The same goes with sexism. And this one was actually a little bit more interesting because this sexism study that they included did not include people who look at traditional gender roles and believe that society should follow those.
Ah, they included a sexism study as well. How generous. It seems redundant at this point, but by any chance were they Hillary supporters? Also, I know you don't directly say they're wrong, but you mentioned traditional gender roles. Do you think people who support traditional gender roles are sexist? Or is this another facet of this study that isn't your opinion?
Things like men should work, women should raise children. Those were not included. What they were looking at was hostility towards women. And that's what they found overwhelmingly in these Donald Trump supporters, both in the primary and in the general election.
So 42% of all women in the United States who voted are hostile towards women. Good thing that internalized misogyny thing worked out.
You know, a lot of people don't quite understand that political science is still a science. Those of us who have degrees in it understand that when you go to college and you learn about this, it is mostly about polls and understanding data and being able to extrapolate the main points out of that and use that to come to logical conclusions.
Okay, look, aside from the fact that political and social science are soft sciences due to their inability to repeat experiments to determine theories, I also want to point out that the type of analysis you're talking about isn't limited to political science. Now, I don't want to discredit political science, but there is the argument of subjectivity versus objectivity here. If something is written but doesn't contain empirical data that can be replicated, then it cannot be asserted as absolute fact.
Political science is a science, and that's what these professors at the University of Massachusetts are trying to tell us. That based upon all the available data, the largest factors in Donald Trump's primary and electoral success were racism and sexism.
I already said that your careless shit spouting is ridiculous, but since you insist on calling me a racist and sexist, I'll throw a few more points in. Despite what intersectional feminists might say, women were not afraid to use their, dare I say, privilege and power over men to sexually coax them into voting against Trump. Black Lives Matter activists have been intimidating white people and police for months, while the movement was publicly endorsed by Barack Obama himself. Can you really blame the people for voting in a man who gave them nothing but hope, as opposed to a candidate that supported black and female supremacy and whose entire campaign rested on her becoming the first woman president?
And I know a lot of Donald Trump supporters still refuse to believe that, and they say, look, I voted for Donald Trump because I'm worried about my job. Well, that's great. Are you worried about your job because you think an immigrant's going to come over here and steal it? Because if you are, that's racism.
Completely legitimate for the American farm assistant or construction worker who's more expensive. Do you not remember the global financial crisis, you tit?
You got to understand that, folks. You're voting based on an irrational fear of someone that doesn't look like you, that doesn't think like you, that doesn't speak like you.
When that person's presence threatens the well-being of you or your family, it is not irrational, nor is not wanting your job stolen by an immigrant racial discrimination. I know I'm new to this, but my God, if anything demonstrates the reason that Donald Trump is America's best choice, it's this progressive garbage. Also, didn't vote.
You may not overtly be a racist or a sexist, but these scientists know exactly what they're doing when they ask these questions.
These political science professors are not scientists. They do not have access to my brain and cannot extract my thoughts. There is no proven method to completely analyze a person's thoughts. Stop acting like these people are Nobel Prize winners.
You may have underlying feelings that you don't even quite know are there, but they're there.
It's official, folks. God's real and he's a white guy. Suck on that, feminists.
Study after study following this election has proven this, and anyone who claims to the contrary that racism and sexism did not play a large role in Donald Trump's victory is lying to themselves. The data is clear. Donald Trump voters overwhelmingly hold racist and sexist views.
Well, I think I'm done listening to God Almighty himself, so I'm going to wrap this up. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll be sure to upload some more content soon. Bye.